In the past few decades, people have been talking a lot about mental health. It's about time. We're paying more attention to how mental health issues affect everyone. But it's still not easy to understand. Some people don't get it, and they might not be very tolerant. In this video, I'll talk about mental health in a different way than what you usually see on TV or online. Instead of the usual stuff about pop psychology or Freud, I'll focus on ideas from a psychologist named Alfred Adler. He was big in the early 1900s, and now his ideas are making a comeback. In these extracts, you'll learn about Adler's ideas and how they can help us today. Even though his ideas are almost 100 years old, they're still important. Adler believed that we have the power to control our own lives. That's a big deal even now. Just a quick heads up before we get started. We put out new stuff every week, so make sure you don't miss any of it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay in the loop with our latest extracts. Let's jump right in. Imagine hearing about someone who lives alone in the building across the street, rarely venturing out of their apartment. You might jump to conclusions about why they live that way. It's easy to think that they must have been through something awful to want to shut themselves away from the world. Maybe you'd assume they're permanently scarred by their past experiences. We tend to believe that our past shapes our future behavior. It's that we think everyone's actions are just reactions to what happened to them before. We often blame past trauma for how people behave now. For example, we might think a bullied child grows up to be an anxious adult, unable to handle social situations. But not everyone fits into these neat boxes. Some people who go through tough times as kids grow up just fine. So maybe there's more to it than just what happened in the past. Take the recluse across the street. Maybe they choose to stay inside because they prefer it that way. Maybe they use their anxiety as an excuse to avoid going out. The point is, people aren't stuck being a certain way because of their past. We have the freedom to change and grow. That's what Alfred Adler, a psychologist from the last century, believed. So, instead of assuming everyone's behavior is set in stone, we should remember that people can choose to be different. We're not just products of our past, we have the power to shape our own futures. Our social circles include different types of people. You got your optimists and your pessimists. Everyone knows a few. Some folks believe these personality types are fixed, set in stone from the get-go. That's what traditional psychology tends to teach us. It tells us we all fit into certain molds, whether we're naturally cheery, gloomy, or somewhere in between. But there's another way of looking at it according to Adlerian psychology. Instead of talking about fixed characters, they use the term lifestyle. This change in language emphasizes the fact that there is no fixed inner nature that determines our moods. They are a result of how we perceive the world. So, if you tend to see things in a negative light, pessimism becomes your default mode. Adler suggested we actively choose our lifestyles and attitudes around age 10, based on what we've experienced in life so far, both good and bad. Even though we talk about changing our outlooks, it's not as easy as flipping a switch. Think about those friends who always brag about being unhappy but never seem to do anything about it. It might seem like they want to change, but deep down, they're comfortable in their misery. They're afraid to step into the unknown because, well, it's scary. They might hate where they are, but it's familiar. Change means risking failure, and that's a tough pill to swallow. Take the classic case of the perpetually single guy. He's been alone for ages but can't muster the courage to put himself out there. Meeting new people feels daunting, let alone dating. Why? Because he's stuck in his ways and attached to his solitary lifestyle. It's like they say, better the devil you know than the one you don't. We all have our flaws, don't we? I mean, who hasn't taken a peek in the mirror and felt a bit uneasy about what they see staring back at them? But here's the thing, sometimes we blow those little imperfections way out of proportion. It's like we magnify them until they feel like the biggest problems in the world. Let me tell you a story about Ichiro Kishimi, a wise author who noticed this kind of thinking in action. He once had a student who confided in him, saying he really didn't like himself. Kishimi was surprised. Why would he feel that way? Well, the student was all too aware of his faults. He felt he lacked confidence, had a negative outlook on life, and was awkward in social situations. He thought that if he could just change these things about himself, he'd be okay. He was even ready to take a class to boost his self-confidence. But Kishimi wasn't satisfied with this approach. He asked the student how it felt to talk openly about hating himself. It only made him feel worse, the student said, and he understood why nobody wanted to be around him. That's when Kishimi had a revelation. The student was so focused on what he thought was wrong with him that he pushed people away without even realizing it. You see, when we retreat into ourselves because we're afraid of getting hurt, we end up coming across as distant and maybe even a bit stuck up. But it doesn't have to be like that. We've got to accept that life has its ups and downs, its joys and its pains, and hiding away won't solve anything. It's like trying to fix the wrong problem. So, next time you catch yourself dwelling on your flaws, remember, they're just a part of what makes you, well, you. And that's pretty darn special. Have you ever noticed how our society is all about competition? We're always striving to be the best, pushing ourselves to progress. But here's the thing, being competitive isn't always good for our mental health. It's tough for everyone involved. Those who feel like they're losing or have low self-esteem really struggle in this kind of environment. But even the so-called winners aren't immune to the pressure. They're always expected to keep winning and to never slip up. That's why you often see successful people who are still deeply unhappy. Success doesn't guarantee happiness, especially when it comes at such a high cost. But here's the thing, we don't have to buy into this competitive mindset. We don't have to feel like others are holding us back. Take worrying about how we look, for example. It's natural to wonder what others think of us, but most of the time people aren't paying attention. They're too wrapped up in their own lives to care about ours. It's easy to become engrossed in the fantasy that everyone is judging us, but it's just that, a fantasy. Once we realize that nobody really cares about our appearance or our choices, we're free. The only thing holding us back is our own attitude, so why not let go of the competition and embrace that freedom? You know how sometimes we do things just to fit in or to get someone's approval? Like in school, when some kids bully others just to impress the popular ones. It's like we're living by someone else's rules, not our own. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to do things just because others expect you to. Imagine this, a colleague of yours starts picking up trash around the office. But if no one notices or says anything, she might stop doing it altogether. Seeking approval can mess things up. Think about school. It's all about getting rewards for doing well and getting punished for mistakes. But that's not how life should be. We shouldn't only do things when there's a reward or punishment involved. We can change this cycle by understanding that we don't have to live up to what others expect from us. If we do, we might end up making decisions based on what others think, like choosing a job or a partner. Sometimes, families push us to follow certain paths, maybe because it's tradition or what society expects. But if we give in to that pressure, we might end up in jobs that don't make us happy. So, it's okay to disappoint others, even our families, if it means making choices that are right for us. If picking up trash makes you happier than doing heart surgeries, then go for it. Your happiness should guide your choices, not what others think you should be doing. Imagine a kid at school who stops caring about their grades and starts getting bad marks. Most parents would probably react by getting stricter, thinking that discipline is the solution. But here's the thing, getting too involved in other people's lives usually doesn't work out well. We all have to learn to take responsibility for our own actions. So, if a parent keeps pushing a child to study harder, the child might not actually start liking studying. Instead, they might just feel forced to do it because they have to. It's kind of like trying to control someone. It doesn't really show that you care about them. It just shows that you want things to go your way. For example, the parents might want their child to do well in school to prove they're good parents, not necessarily because they truly care about their child's learning. What parents should do instead is give their kids space to make their own choices while still being there to help if they need it. This way, kids learn to be independent and responsible, and they might even start enjoying learning. But it can be hard to realize when you're meddling in someone's life and need to change how you interact with them. We're so used to thinking of our loved ones as extensions of ourselves that we sometimes end up trying to control them instead of supporting them. For instance, if your partner is jobless, you might come up with a plan for them to find work and try to make them follow it. But true support means understanding their situation without trying to force them to do things your way, even if they're not perfect, like struggling to find a job. Feeling lonely is common nowadays, like you're cut off from everyone else. But that's not true. We're all part of a bigger group. Adlerian psychology says community is super important for humans, but it's not just about the people we hang out with or our neighbors. Adler says it's about a global community. That means everything and everyone, plants, animals, rocks, is everywhere. The idea is that we should find happiness by being part of this big community. Once we see where we fit, we'll act it differently. We'll care more about what's around us. We're not the center of everything. It's normal to think we're the main characters in our story, but it's a problem when we think we're more important than we really are. If we start acting like we're the kings of the universe, we'll only care about what others can do for us. That's not fair. Thinking like that just leads to disappointment because nobody is that special. An ego that big can't be satisfied. That's why we need to change our thinking. Instead of focusing on what we can get from the world, think about what we can give back. That's what really matters. Ever feel like you're stuck in a loop, always thinking about yourself and your problems? Yeah, we've all been there. But guess what? It's not worth it. Most people out there are pretty cool, so why waste time feeling sorry for yourself? When we get too caught up in our own heads, it messes with our perspective. Suddenly, everything seems negative and twisted. Like when someone says, "Nobody cares about me," or "I never win." That's just looking at a few bad moments and blowing it out of proportion. Take stuttering, for example. Some people start stuttering because they're so worried about how they talk. Maybe someone teased them once, and now they think everyone's out to get them. But really, most people are nice and don't care if someone stutters. But when we're obsessed with ourselves, it leads to other problems too, like becoming a workaholic. We start putting work above everything else because it makes us feel important. But that's kind of selfish, right? We're choosing work over spending time with loved ones. So, according to Adler, if we want to be happy, we need to change how we think. First, we have to stop competing with everyone and worrying about what they think of us. Instead, we should focus on how we can help others and be part of the community. It might seem tough, but it's doable. We just have to stop being so self-centered and start caring about more than just ourselves. Before you click away, let's wrap up today's video with some nuggets of wisdom you won't want to miss. It's simple yet profound. You have the power to be whoever you want to be. Yep, that's right. There is no need to conform to anyone else's expectations or limitations. You're free to grow, change, and evolve as much as your heart desires. Now let's talk action. How can we put this into practice? Well, first off, live in the moment. Seriously, soak it all in. Don't get bogged down by what others think or what society tells you to do. Just be you. And what about those dreams of yours? Whether it's becoming a rock star or mastering a new hobby, go for it. But here's a kicker. Don't put your life on hold until you reach those dreams. Enjoy the journey, play your music, paint your masterpiece, and if success comes knocking, awesome. But remember, it's not the only measure of fulfillment. So as we sign off today, remember this. Embrace who you are, live fully, and chase those dreams with passion. You've got this. Thanks for tuning in. We really value your feedback on our content. If you have any thoughts or book recommendations, feel free to share them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Thanks for stopping by, and have an awesome day.